We need like an intro song, I feel like, but hey.
Yeah, after like
book club.
Comic-Ories and all these other shows that we do that have these like grand intros. Book club's just still like pretty bottom of the barrel as far as production goes. It's just like,
we're here.
Look at these two jerks talking about comics, pretending they know things.
The Starr, it's a Starr kind of driven show.
We don't need any fancy graphics. We speak for ourselves.
Oh man. Hello everyone. Welcome to the June look back. The monthly show that we're doing now, the Book Club Monthly. And we are looking back at our favorite books, the most noteworthy books, or some of the interesting stories that we're following here in the month of June. This is our fourth one of these? Third?
At least, maybe fifth.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, I know.
It's going by very quickly.
Yeah, it's like it's closer to 2022 than it is to 2020.
Wow. Yikes. Okay. So we've got a lot of things we want to talk about. Some of the books we're going to go through tonight. We've talked about Karmen a bunch, and the final issue of Karmen dropped this week.
Yeah,
God. Today? Holy cow. So we'll talk about Karmen. Finish that one off. We've got Eve, which I was convinced to read and enjoy because of great people like Jennifer from Comics Will Break Your Heart. We got 2 issues of that we're going to discuss. We've been working our way through Laila Starr, also, a book that Jennifer's a big fan of, and I've got that wonderful cover that doesn't really show up well on camera. And if we have time, we might even get into some crossover or the variant of the month for me, which was this amazing 6 sidekicks of Trigger Keaton. I just need to hold that up more often.
You should just have that in the background.
Just ready to pull those out. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of indies. I don't think we've got any Marvel or any DC that we're really going to be going over tonight. A ton of Image, some Boom Studios. So we're going to get into some stuff. But I think right off the bat, because Gore is here. Hello to you, Mr. Gore Vidal. We're going to get into some Karmen after I say hello to the chat.
So, Jennifer, you can probably step out for 10, 15 minutes and come back.
Yeah, you got 15 minutes before some Rom V talk. Hello to Old Wolf. Hello to Perry. Not only did he drop a video today, but he's been going live again. So good to see you around the community again, Perry. Hello, X11 Bravo. Good evening to you, sir. Let's see. We've got Kachung. He knows it's book club time. Good to see you. Got that notification bell clicked. See, she's ready for some Laila Starr. We will definitely be getting there. Let's see. Did I miss anybody else? Oh, X11 is dropping everybody's names here. A podcast in August. Nice. Very exciting. Does reading books 3 months behind on the app count? I mean, hey.
Yeah. I mean, we might spoil stuff for you that you are not caught up on yet, but I mean, definitely everyone's welcome, even if you didn't read comics all year.
Right. Good. Hey, good for you though. You're reading books. Keep it up.
I try to be inclusive.
Right. Hello, HK. How are you doing? Good to see you this evening. And let's see. Did I miss it? Chris Barrett says no love for this champion. What are you talking about? Did you say something earlier and I just missed it? Did I skip over you? I don't think so. But good to see you, sir. Champion. What's going on? And I think I got everybody. Is Delphi here too? Oh, she says hi. She's tapping away on her laptop. Thank you for joining us. So yeah, we're going to kick it off. We've been discussing Karmen for the last few months. And I know it's been high on your list of some of your favorite reads each month. Now we've got basically 2 issues to discuss because there was one issue 4 at the beginning of the month and one right here now just before this show today. So we kind of decided we're just going to finish it off and do both issues together. How you feeling about how this story ended? Because obviously at the beginning you were like, dude, this is like going to be the best book of the year.
Yeah, I definitely still enjoyed it. I felt like the ending wasn't as strong as the beginning for me. Partially, I mean, I think I mentioned it when we were talking about issue 3, where the whole thing with Karmen's side of the world kind of lost me a little bit, because, and I get why he included it, because it served as a way to tell you why it ended the way it did.
Sure.
But I think we could have gotten there without it, and it didn't. It felt like, have you watched The Good Place?
Yes.
Spoilers for The Good Place. It felt very similar in that, where it's like this person Karmen kind of put this monkey wrench into what is known to be true in the afterlife.
The system.
Right. And she kind of proved that there are red light and blue light souls, basically, and red light souls kind of have to go and be reincarnated to a worse life, and blue light souls get reincarnated into a better life. And Karmen kind of proved once before, which the institution realizes towards the end. She proved once before that in between the time someone dies and then they are their soul is sent away, or ushered on by Karmen and the other death dealer, whatever they are.
Right.
That in that time, their soul can change.
Yes.
And so that's why
the things done even in between that transition still qualify.
Right.
Much like Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks, where he's even given the opportunity to continue on to the good place based on his behavior in that limbo.
Right. So the reason Karmen spends so much time with our deceased heroine, I guess.
Yeah.
Main character.
I mean, yeah.
Is because she is trying to do that. She sees something in her that she says, I know that you shouldn't be damned, because there's something in you that's better than what you have given yourself.
Right.
Which, I think that in itself was a beautiful thought and a beautiful message. But I just could have done without the excess of that other world, because I feel like it kind of dumbed it down a little bit, or explained too much for me, where
Okay.
I think the pages that he used to tell that part of the story could have been used to tell more of, because I just felt like when I was reading those parts of the story, I wanted to get back to Karmen and
Kata and Karmen. Yeah. So yeah, I fully agree with you that issue 5 was my least favorite of the 5. It definitely was bogged down with the exposition of needing to explain some things, and it detracted for me. And by no means am I saying that it's a failure of a comic, because I still think it's a powerful 5-issue read, and the style and the art and the story are all very strong. But it is a piece that feels at odds with the rest of the story, in that I feel like issue 5 is not character driven, but a lot of issues 1, 2, and 3 are very character driven. And the character driven portions lead Kata on this journey with Karmen, and we get to see not a plot that is driving the story, but a character who is moving through the story naturally. Then we get to the 5th book, and even I would say part or even half of the 4th book, and it feels very much like a plot contrivance is being forced onto it that is trying to explain itself into existence, and it feels it's distracting. I dislike the 2 characters specifically in the last book, that spend a lot of time talking about our characters but have no impact in any real way on our characters. And that portion of the story really drags. And I find very frustrating. It has none of the artistry and the creativity and the originality that the rest of the issues thrived on.
Yeah, and especially because there are these really great moments of beauty, like when Angelina goes to throw that thing away and literally like punches through her heart, and then when she's talking to or she's watching the guy leave the message for her, and she like reaches out to touch him and then doesn't. Like those moments are like so big and powerful. And then it's like wow, counting.
Sorry, Gore Vidal said something here. Or do you want to?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Gore says, I saw that in between time as a kind of purgatory where a person's consciousness or character has the opportunity to change. It's a spiritual resurrection where one breathes life in the lives of others. Yeah. And we saw that at the end when she visits with the old woman and now treats her with loving kindness.
Right. And that's something that, they even said is that, when Karmen's talking to her, she says, how great would it be if you could come back to this life and be a better version of yourself? Right. Which is something I think we all kind of strive for. And that does happen. So the main character does get resurrected back to herself. Her roommate finds her in the tub finally, and they are able to revive her. And she has, this is the other thing I want to touch on that I think was a little sloppier towards the end, was she has like these flashes or these dreams of these memories of being in this in-between world, but right. she doesn't remember. She just kind of has these feelings, and she's writing them all down in this notebook. And one of the things she remembers is the ring falling into the sewer.
Right.
So she goes and gets that, and they give it back to the woman who was going to get proposed to, and that's all well and good. And then she kind of like remembers what type of car hit the guy and all this. And for me, I wish it was more about like her proving to herself that it was real, more so than being like, because, for me, the scene with the old woman was showing that she is a better version of herself. She's not calling her the crazy cat lady anymore. She's actually seeing her as a person and treating her that way. And, you get to see that the old woman is actually taking care of this litter of kittens that she wasn't expecting. So she's not like just this crazy old cat hoarder. That she's actually doing a good thing for these animals. Right. And so for me, like, I feel like I didn't get the sense from her character that she wouldn't have gone and gotten the ring. Otherwise, like, that didn't show me that she had changed. That to me was showing her realizing that what she remembered was real. And I think that would have been enough, rather than her being like, oh my God, the car and this and that.
Yeah, it seemed like there was almost like an effort to bring justice to injustice, or some superhero calling that didn't seem necessary at the end.
Not necessary, and not even fleshed out. Like it was kind of like this passing moment before she said, I don't need this notebook anymore, and they turned it into paper airplanes.
Right.
Which was, again, kind of like a nice moment, but it also didn't have that like punch of a final line for me. It kind of just faded out, which maybe that was intentional. But I mean, overall, I still think it was great, really well done. I just think that the beginning started on a high that for me, that like it couldn't have really stayed at that level. Like I knew that there was going to be dips, but
yeah,
I'd still recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, even the worst issue in the run for me would not get less than an 8, which is very high grading overall. So
especially on this show.
Yeah, on this show. Issue 5, I'd probably give the 8 to, but as an overall series, the art and originality is so strong that it can overcome a mediocre ending, or at least a subpar to the rest of the series ending.
Yeah, it still looked great. Like
absolutely.
The quality of the art did not go down at all.
No. Hello to Comic Man Andy, who just did his reviews. Andy, as always, you have a link anytime you want to join, but I know you got crazy, difficult hours these days, but you're always welcome, my man. Hello, Tom. What's going on? Thank you for coming by. So yeah, that's Karmen issues 4 and 5. Did you want to give it a grade, or do you want to move on? What are you thinking here?
Like an overall grade or the issues?
Yeah, I was giving issue 5 and 8. I would say overall, I'd give this series, I don't know, 8, 5, or 9, somewhere in that range.
I give the whole series probably a 9. Yeah,
okay.
I guess an 8 is pretty fair. I'm pretty close to where you are with it.
Okay.
Between issues 4 and 5, there were like issues somewhere there that I could have given a much higher grade to, but
totally
with the things that I didn't like as much actually being in there.
It pulls it down a little, to be sure. So just because I know Jennifer's probably still lurking somewhere, I think we should probably do some Laila Starr now for her.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think it's, again, like we talked about this a couple of times, where they're not really companion pieces, but they deal with a very similar theme.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for those not reading Ram V's Boom Studios book, The Many Deaths of Laila Starr, it also centers around death and the afterlife and sort of mythology for various afterlife deities. In this case, it's an Indian culture that we're really looking at here. And we have the vision of death sort of living out these lives, the figure of death, the god of death, living out lives as Laila Starr, immortal, because death lost her job as the goddess of death due to an individual who is going to be born and dying.
Create immortality in
yes.
humans. Before we move on, there's 2 comments I just want to
I saw Gore dropped one, right? I found the paper airplanes ending quite beautiful, and the final 2 pages, how Kahi now truly flying. And after I finished reading it, I thought about the film Amelie. There you go. That's a great one. Great connection.
Amelie is tremendous.
Chef's kiss.
I saw it 5 times in the theater in college.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece.
It is one of the most magical movies probably ever made. I think that I can see where you're going with that connection. I don't see the characters as being the same. Amelie was much more of a troublemaker. Like
there's more mischievousness,
right? Like it for all good reasons, but she was a sneaky little minx, and
Karmen has elements of that in her personality, but she seems driven by a need to prove something.
Yeah,
Kachung says, in Karmen, do they explore a negative change or corruption that happens in purgatory, or is it positive changes? No, it's free will still kind of reigns.
I think they kind of like hint at the idea that time isn't necessarily strictly for bettering yourself. It's that your soul can still change in that time between when you die and when you're, when you go through the light. Yeah. But in the world of the comic, it's only ever happened twice.
Yeah.
And both times there were positive changes, and both times it was from Karmen.
Yeah.
So we only see it as a chance to become positive.
Yeah.
But I get the sense that like it is just still free will.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, that was Karmen, and then we'll jump over to the Many Deaths of Laila Starr. Did you have any feelings on now issue 3, where we're on the 3rd life of Laila?
So let me say that I very much enjoyed this issue. However, I didn't at first, because it is so jarring, the shift in storytelling from the first couple issues.
Great comment. Yeah.
But when I took a step back from that and said, okay, let me look at what he's doing with this story, where it is literally showing her lives on Earth and her deaths and her resurrections. And that you can, tell those stories of her lives in different ways. So
because we had the crow in the second issue, right?
Right.
Telling a lot of the story.
Right. And the first and the second issues definitely had a different tone to them as well, but it still felt like it didn't change so much that it was like this could almost have been a standalone book outside of the story, where number 2 was clearly still, the plot continuing from the first issue. And by the end of this issue, it was still the plot continuing, but it dropped you into her story from this life and told it. And it felt like very much like, didn't feel like an issue of Optic Nerve, but it felt like, just this story about these kids and this pillow factory fire.
I mean, I will legitimately say when I read this third issue of Laila Starr, my immediate reaction was, this is my least favorite of the 3. Like it didn't fit. It didn't have the same emotional impact, and I did not care for it as much. I did read it again, and I did like it maybe a little bit more, but I still feel like it's the weakest of the 3 and the most, I think you used the word jarring. Yeah. Disorienting, because it just doesn't mesh very well. I love the concept. So for those that haven't read issue 3 of Laila Starr, it's told from the perspective of one of her cigarettes, which is a very challenging thing to kind of grasp.
Because they don't have consciousness.
Well, that, and it's hard to understand how much of her life this one cigarette would actually be in contact with.
Yeah.
It's very creative, and I do enjoy the originality of it. I just don't think it's as effective a story device as it could have been, and as a result, it does feel very jarring, I think is the word I keep going back to.
It is gorgeous. The art was great.
Yeah, so that's Philippe Andrade, and obviously the artwork in both of these series has been something to really make it worth the money on every level. The color work is also very unusual.
Yeah, I think I guess my point is that I feel like if you look at this as a standalone story, it's stronger than it is as an issue 3 to this story.
I could see that.
But it still does fit into the greater narrative. It's just not, it didn't really move anything forward for me.
Definitely agree there. I feel like the story paused to do this. And that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. I mean, I love sorry, I went to the same page already shown. When it's like from the perspective of this giant cigarette, like coming out. So you can almost like look from its vantage. All of that was very interesting. And the perspective of a lot of the frames is very interesting. I think the low angles on a lot of things work clearly, really well.
Like, this is going to tie in somehow. They pretty much say directly at the end, because the god of life is talking to her and says, "Oh, do you want to see him again?" Right. He's gonna be older, but like, you can go talk to him. One of the friends from this story. So it is. Hopefully, it seems like it's going to be important that we know this story moving forward. But again, it just felt like kind of a step out from the story to tell this story.
Chris from Chaos and Comics says that Laila learned a lot more about the kid in this particular issue, and in that way fit the narrative a little better for him. I didn't feel that as strongly this time around. Mainly, maybe it's because it was the cigarette was telling the story, and it felt emotionally distant as a result. Because
very, very matter of fact.
It didn't have an emotional like, wow, she's really learning something in this experience. It was just sort of stated. But maybe I need to read. Sounds like Alec, read it more than me, maybe, and has gotten more out of it.
I wouldn't say that. No.
Now, I don't remember if this is a 5 or a 6 issue limited series.
If it's 5 issues, they need to really pick up the pace, because I feel like we've barely touched the surface of what the actual story is about, which is her finding this kid and either killing him or realizing that life just needs to go the way it goes, and she's going to be out of a job, and tough luck because she has learned about humanity being human. Like, it's going to be one of those two things. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, Coach Vic, this is issue 3 of The Many Deaths of Laila Starr, and this issue is told from the point of view of one of her cigarettes. That's the storyteller, the narrator.
And all the little narration bubbles have are kind of like smoke.
Let me double check. Yeah, they've got little puffs of cloud. You can kind of see. There you go. That one right. Where is it? Right there. Yeah.
Backwards StreamYard.
Yeah. So overall, I think the first 2 issues of this series were 9.5s for me, like really good, strong issues. This one might be closer to an 8.5, but I'm not disappointed. I'm not upset. I'm not frustrated with it. Much like Karmen, it just felt like a step back a little bit, but not a huge one.
Yeah, I mean, can't all be club bangers.
It's a great series, Vic. I really do recommend it. I think it's one of the best indies going right now.
For sure. I mean, I both of these, even though we're kind of saying some negative stuff about it, I mean, it is book club, so we're going to say negative stuff.
Yeah, and I think
I still would highly recommend both of these series. I think they're,
and I think that's the point. Like Chaos is saying, like 8.0 as a lowest of all the issues of Karmen and Laila Starr put together, and 8.0 would be the lowest for me. Like, these are obviously books on the very high end of quality, and yeah, some great covers. The foil, I love the foils on the Laila Starr covers are great, and I think they're supposed to all have a foil variant, as far as I understand.
Well, at this point, I hope so. That'd be very frustrating for people who have been buying the foils, and all of a sudden issue 4 comes out. It's like, sorry, it's just the first 3. Now you're gonna have a collection that looks weird.
Pull the rug out right there. I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to say about it. I think we've kind of hit on it. I mean, you mentioned the fire in the building, which is, it wouldn't be Laila Starr if there wasn't some element of tragedy and death,
right,
included. And as poetic as the cigarette can be waxing in the narration, the impact of the deaths is pretty strong.
It's unclear if it's this cigarette, but a cigarette caused the fire.
Yes. I took it as this cigarette, but maybe I need to read it more closely.
Yeah, it might have supposed to have been, but I didn't pick up on that.
What's up, Tom? And Chaos says, could you imagine if we were reading Sandman, we'd be hating on it as well. I mean, that is the theme of this show. We're not trying to be negative. We're just trying to be clear on the good
constructive.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, right? Because we are so, at least those of us who have read it, John, we're so kind of connected to it at this point, knowing that it's a classic. It's I don't know if you're familiar. There's this band called Neutral Milk Hotel.
I'm not, but that's an amazing name.
And it's basically a solo project by this guy named Jeff Mangum, who is legitimately crazy. Like, he recorded the whole album in a closet in a abandoned house, and since that album came out in the 90s, like, he's basically just totally disappeared.
One and done.
It has become kind of like this classic indie album that is considered to be one of the best of all time. And there's a website called Pitchfork, and this album called In an Airplane Over the Sea, which I'm talking about right now, they had reviewed it when it first came out and gave it, I have no idea what review they gave it, but years later they went back and re-reviewed it and gave it a 10, because, like, hindsight, they're like, oh yeah, this is one of the greatest albums. But at the time, I'm sure they didn't give it a 10, or else why would they re-review it?
Right. And so I remember in film school, somebody bought me a book that was like great movies and the horrible reviews that they got. It was like It was all of the like commentary on how like, you know what, you got to take reviews with a grain of salt and be able to read through to like, I love like Kenneth Turan has always been one of my favorite reviewers because I can tell based on his review if I would like it. Based on what he liked or didn't like about the movie, I could read into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus a critic who just wants to praise everything or bash everything.
Yeah. Someone I'm sure gave Jurassic Park a bad review.
If it was anyone but the first one, it was probably me.
No, I meant the first one.
Okay. Johnny Boy says he likes a good negative review. It lets you know the truth and doesn't just tell you everything's amazing. I can appreciate that.
And to be, fair to us, I know I am especially negative a lot of times, but it's a lot easier discussing the negative than it is the positive. Because you can say like, oh, the art's great, but when I was doing my artist review series, it took me like a week to write those to talk about like the specifics of what's good. Whereas seeing what's bad and what can be improved upon is so, I don't know. It's just like it's simpler to touch on.
A grain of salt would be a great name for our review. So
yeah.
But yet again, Bueller would get mad at me for all the fact that almost every show I've ever done on YouTube doesn't have the word comics in the name or comic books. It's just like a random set of letters, or it's just like Saturday morning.
The Wednesday show.
Yeah, exactly. Bueller's like, dude, how would anybody know what you're talking about on your channel?
Wow.
You haven't been negative in your 2 reviews, pointed out problems, and masterpieces even have problems. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I used to have, when I was working on my comic years ago, I had this fortune from a fortune cookie taped to my drawing table that said nothing is perfect, which I looked at when I was doing my own stuff and rolled my eyes at it quite a bit because that's part of the reason why I don't do as much as I should with writing or whatever, is because I'm too much of a perfectionist and it just drives me crazy. But looking at other people's stuff, it's like, yeah, of course nothing's perfect. Like there's always going to be
spot everything. Yeah.
Like, and that's okay. Things can still be great without being perfect unless I'm making them, then they're just shit.
It's just garbage.
Yeah.
You're reminding me of one year for an event at school. A parent had fortune cookies made and like distributed them to all the classrooms. So everybody got their own fortune cookie. And Charlie was on my campus at the time and she got one. And the fortune cookies were wonderful. They were like things that were specific to our school and our teachers and our staff and all these things to be thankful for. Charlie got one that said, be thankful for Mr. John. So she got the fortune cookie about her own dad. I was like, this is amazing. I took it from her. I taped it to my laptop. I was like, yeah.
That's great. So
it's the opposite. I have a fortune that was like, hey, be grateful for yourself. And Charlie got it. So suck it. No, I totally get what you're saying, Chaos, that those first few issues of Sandman compared to the whole run of Sandman might have been the low point, and that would be maybe reviewed more harshly in today's climate.
I mean, especially like when that book was coming out, if YouTube existed back then, like we probably would be reading stuff that was not similar to that. So we'd be like, what is this weird, poetic, stupid bullshit?
Where's Superman?
Yeah.
Isn't the Justice League supposed to be in this? Well, I guess we can go to the thumbnail book if you're ready for that.
Sure.
Sorry, Jennifer, you must have gotten busy with dinner, so we missed you on the Laila Starr.
Be listening, we don't know.
So I was recommended by several people like Bearded Comic Bro and Comics Will Break Your Heart, Jennifer, to read Eve from Boom Studios. And I will legitimately say I did not like this cover so much that I skipped this book.
Yeah.
I looked the cover.
Me too. It looked like something that I would not have been interested in.
Absolutely. So this cover was such a disappointment, and the variant not a whole lot better for me. In both cases, I was like, eh. However, if this had been the cover of the first book, I probably would have bought it, because I think the second issue with the negative space of the white around it and the wonderful inside of her hair, this watery battle between these monsters and the little robot teddy bear, that would have. So it's
I got that cover.
Ooh, very nice.
That's issue 2.
So I was definitely, cover buying or cover dismissing when it came to Eve. And thankfully, several of you kept mentioning it in comments or on videos or in chats that it encouraged me enough to go back by my LCS and find it. And I'm very glad I did, because this might be my favorite thing of June are these 2 issues of Eve, because I've read both in June. So I'm going to throw them all together. I thought it was a very creative story, very, very fun take on a somewhat traditional post-apocalyptic concept. And I love the banter between the teddy bear and Eve. And I love the sort of, I don't know, light kid horror of the issues. So I was very, very happy with these 2 books.
I'm going to say something that probably is not going to come to much of a surprise to you. I did. Let me start by saying this. I did enjoy them. They were fun reads. The story moved way too fast,
which has been, I think, of the last year book clubs has been a common theme.
Yeah. I personally, I want everything to slow down. That's like my thing that I've been preaching for a long time. I think that the problem is that the industry is now focused on these 5 and 6 issue miniseries because they can sell trades really well like that. And it's not much of a commitment from the publisher to say, yeah, we'll give you 6 issues or 5 issues, where instead of like 12 or 24 or, an ongoing.
Right.
So I get it from a business standpoint, but from a storytelling standpoint, it really, I think, forces the creators who have these like grand ideas for these stories, because this story is like pretty big. It's
very big, yeah.
And you go from the first issue of her living in this dream world, you find out,
right,
to her waking up in this tank, to a android version of her childhood teddy bear, to her finding out that the world is flooded, to her escaping this
and going on a quest
and losing the teddy bear because there are these zombie things that fly out of the buildings and try to attack them, to her getting, it's like, there's so much plot in these 2 issues that like this, the first issue could have been 3 issues and like would still have maybe felt a little fast. Like it's just chock-a-block full of plot. And I'm not saying that's necessarily, it's a bad thing for me. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing.
You're like trying to like defend it. It's fine.
It's just, it's not the storytelling that I prefer.
Sure.
But in this case, I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, because it's not like, oh, this part was really sped up or that part was really sped up. It's just that I feel like they're moving very quickly through this. And for all I know, issue 3 might come out and say like, oh, that was just to get you to this point, because this is when the real story starts.
Well, and to your credit, like, you called that on Scout's Honor issue 1, and everybody felt it when issue 5 came along. I felt it incredibly strongly in that last 2 issues of Scout's Honor. Those 2 issues should have been the second trade, and that the first 3 issues could have been the first trade. And given time to breathe, I think Scout's Honor would have been one of the best series of the year. And truncated as it was, it robbed a lot of the juice of that story. I don't feel it as strongly here with Eve, these first 2 issues, but I didn't feel it for the first 2 issues of Scout's Honor either. So you could totally be onto it and what they're doing here. My hope is that this is an ongoing and not a mini 5-issue series. Because if it is a mini 5-issue series, this is going to be a train wreck.
I'm not sure. I did not look into that, but
I'm hoping for more of a Middle West, longer like storyline.
15 issues, maybe.
Absolutely. Issue 1, I do agree, was chock-a-block, to use your terms. But I felt like it needed to she needed to be out of the dream and into this new world in issue 1. I felt like that needed to happen.
I felt like there were opportunities.
Maybe it went farther after that than it needed to go, but I felt like that was it kind of needed to have that reveal. The reveal at the end was not one of those villain reveals. It's a setting reveal. It's a a reality check. It's the red blue pill kind of moment for her. And I feel like that had to happen here at the end of the issue.
But didn't it happen in the middle of the issue?
I don't remember.
Hold on, mine's not bad. Mine's not
Okay.
bad. I can look.
Yeah, you good with that? You got issue 1 right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as I remembered, but maybe I need to go back and reread it. I thought she wakes up near the 3/4 mark, and then it was like a little bit after where they're getting into like learning from the bear some truths.
It is before. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is 7 pages before the centerfold.
That she comes out of the.
Yes.
Oh wow.
There's
My
1,
bad.
2, 3.
So what is the
4,
big reveal at the end?
5, 6.
Is she on the quest?
It's on page 8 where you find out she's in the tank.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so I remembered her sitting up high on the rooftops looking at the city. I considered that the reveal when she climbs out to see it, but then I get what you're saying here. Yeah, so the centerfold. Yeah, there you go. So for me, the reveal though was it was a setting reveal, right?
Right.
This is what the world
that's certainly
looks
a big
like.
reveal, but
Not a villain reveal.
It's kind of like if we're talking about Scout's Honor again. We talked about the first issue. There's the reveal halfway through the first issue of that too, where you find out that the main character is a girl.
I thought that wasn't that the last page.
No,
or was that in the middle?
I was in the middle.
Ah, Jesus, I could have sworn. See,
I'm pretty sure.
My brain is retroactively changing.
So, and I get that, like, there, unless you're showing kind of like her in this dream world, showing more of the kind of stuff that she learns that she's going to put into practice in the real world, there's no reason for her to stay in the dream world that long in the first issue. Because then, like, if they ended that first issue with the reveal that she was in a dream, what's the point other than developing her backstory, which they might go back to show her more in the dream world. But
right.
It kind of was just like, oh, she's in the dream world. And then Teddy Bear's like over and over kind of reiterating the fact that you've been in this dream, walking, eating, sailing a ship. You know how to do all these things. They're just going to not feel right because you're doing them for the first time with your real body.
Right. And I think, to that point as well, if the majority of the book is this fantasy, then the book ends with the shocking reveal. Then as a reader, I'm thinking, I don't even know what issue 2 is going to be like, because I got so invested in what you were showing me. And now you're telling me that none of the rest of the comic is going to be about that. And I think it's good that they got out of the dream world early, and then we are gobsmacked like Eve is in this culture shock.
Yeah, and I don't know what the kind of target age demographic is for this.
Yeah.
I almost say it would be better if you cut out the dream world at the beginning, have her wake up on page 1 and kind of splice in moments of the dream world to show that, like, here's this moment with her father, and here's her real father on the spaceship or whatever, I don't know. I think because you're right. Like, if the whole first issue was the dream world and ended with her waking up, that wouldn't, it would hook me to a point. So I'd be like, well, that's like, where's this going? But I might also feel like the rug was pulled out from under me, and I'm like, well, I was invested in this story and now it's a different story. So maybe I won't go back for issue 2.
Right.
So it's tricky.
Yeah. So for me, it worked. Like I enjoyed the reveals. I enjoyed the evolution of the relationship with the bear. And I felt like issue 2, maybe, and maybe this is, I read both issues together, so they kind of are blending.
Yeah, so did I. But I just read them today, so.
I felt like issue 2 what didn't feel as chock-a-block with stuff because it was really just like part 1 of a journey and dealing with monsters and scary things and trying to figure out how this whole thing works. And I felt like that one was more measured by comparison.
Yeah, I guess there were definitely more big moments in the first issue, but one thing, and I think it was in the second issue, that I kind of was like very confused at was, so she has this teddy bear friend who, it's an android, but there's this weird shot where she's getting ready to get in the boat and you see the teddy bear from behind and he's all like huge and muscly and like kind of has these like robot arms suddenly. And then he shows him in the next panel and he's normal. And she's looking at him when he's all buff and crazy and does not comment on it at all.
Let me see if I can do.
Which I get is like kind of a Chekhov's gun type of thing where the artist and the writer are probably like, well, we need to show that he has the ability to do this before he goes and fights the zombies.
Right. So here he is carrying all of her stuff, and then she's kind of like dumbfounded, and then you cut to, nope, he's tiny again. As he gets onto the boat and stows everything, he turns back into the adorable bear again.
And as far as I remember, like that was the first time he did anything other than look like a bear, right?
Yes, this is the first moment when he kind of shows that he could be able to do other things, which obviously is going to be pretty vital when dealing with the creatures that he gets sucked under with when he's battling those. I don't know what they were. I don't know if they give them a term, do they?
No.
Yeah. So he pretty quickly gets sucked down to
people infected with some sort of virus. That's all we know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, let me ask you something. You went to film school, right?
I think so.
Imagine there was a film of this. And the first 15 minutes were her in this dream world, and then all of a sudden you cut to them being in the real world.
Right.
That would be pretty jarring.
Matrix.
Well, yeah, except for the fact that in the Matrix, they weave in weird stuff happening. So it's not just his life.
Mm.
Whereas this is like, okay,
she's living jarring this way.
She's living in this world, and all besides the fact that it is seemingly some sort of island she's living on with her father, exiled from something, you just kind of accept that that's the world this story's in.
Right.
But there's nothing that makes her question her reality, where in the Matrix, Neo very much questions his reality.
And I would say, just based on taking the time to skim through it again here, that were this a movie, it would happen. It clearly would happen sooner, like than 15 minutes, just based on how quickly it happens here.
It would have happened in the
first 10 minutes or 5 minutes.
I was gonna say first 3 pages of the script.
Yeah, which is a shocking move to make.
Right, but then you could have, jumped back to it at points in the movie to kind of inform.
And I imagine we will
have
little glimpses,
maybe,
but we've kind of had some glimpses of Dad, right?
Yeah, but that's Dad in the real world.
Right. I'm trying to find where she's like putting on the suit and then escaping the creatures. And the bear's talking to her again. Yeah, so she's communicating with the robot backpack suit thing, right? And that's the robot. That's the bear, right? So she's in communication with the bear.
No, she's just talking to herself.
Because it's talking back to her all through this sequence. The yellow voice here that she's talking to.
Oh,
I assumed it was the bear informing her on stuff. So like she's lost him and she's like, how did it work? Did people get sick in one day and turn into those things? No, the virus takes over people, makes them ravenous. it's giving her all this explanation and talking to her. And she's still talking to him. Yeah, she's like, Wexler? Right?
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
So in that way, she's still in communication with him, even though we kind of lose him for the second half of issue 2. There's still he's still kind of the exposition tool, right? Mm-hmm. To like explain the odd phenomenon that she comes across.
But credit where credit's due, it never felt like overly expositional. Like,
no, never.
Because she is completely blind to what's happening. So her asking questions and him answering them makes sense. It didn't feel like, why would he be telling her these things? That's when things bother me when it's expositional, is that like, oh, you remember this time I went to space and this happened and that happens? Like, yes, I was there, the character. Who
yeah, right.
To.
Why are we talking about? Right. Yeah. Who are you talking to? It's the Truman Show, right? When he's like, she's like, try new brand. And he's like, who are you talking to? It's like perfect exposition moment. So I do feel like even the questions that she asks are not like the writer asking a question through the character. They sound like they're worded as she would say them, and they are completely germane to what she's experiencing. So of course she would ask that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's well written. The artwork's pretty good, except for the only time it bothered me for some reason is there's a couple of horizontal panels where it shows characters walking, and they like do not look like how people walk.
And I'm not familiar with the writer or the artist for this book. So if anyone knows Victor Lavelle and Jomi Jong, so we go last a little layout. What is it? There we go. Yeah, he's doing like a strut,
super strut, and she's doing like imitating him almost, but like that's not how a person strides.
Right. Yeah, and she's definitely got a long stride.
It just looks so. It looks over the top for some reason, where the rest of the artwork was like pretty good.
Yeah. I feel like, Chris Barrett, you've never turned into this show before. If you're confused by that,
we're talking about the only comics worth reading right now.
Pew pew.
Yeah.
Because I'm not buying Batman comics at DC right now, and that's basically the entire line.
Yeah, I don't know. Every time I've gone back to pick up like a big 2 comic in the last year, Nightwing was decent, and I'm sure like I haven't kept up on Daredevil. I've heard that's very, very good, but like overall, it's just been like I'd rather have not spent my money on this. I mean, but I'm a curmudgeon-y jerk who doesn't like anything, so don't take my word.
And I will, I don't think there's definitely something to be said about the truth of that. So, clearly you're not alone.
Yeah, Chris Barrett, the show's one massive opinion. Absolutely correct. I've always said that I never claim to be correct. I only claim that it's
aren't all comic book review shows that way, though?
I feel about it. No, some people are like, I'm wrong, get out of my house if you disagree.
No, I meant like, aren't all comic review shows a massive opinion? Like,
right. So otherwise, it'd just be a robot looking at it.
What else? What else are we supposed to do on a review show? But give you our opinion. I don't know. So that's Eve from Boom Studios. I would give. I'm having trouble separating the 2 issues, so I'm gonna just lump them together and say I would give these a 9. Like, I really enjoyed these, and I'm really looking forward to the issue 3, which drops next week. So if you are interested in finding these, you could probably go to your LCS and even find issues 1, 2, and 3 next week.
Yeah, I'd give it like an 8. I'm not as high on it as you are, but it was certainly entertaining.
Holy sheet. Yep, there he is. He's still here. So let me put these back in the bag here. I'm worried I'm going to break something here. Trying to be taking care of the books. That brings...
Because everything's worth $1,000 nowadays. So
Well, yeah, exactly. But I also know my girls are going to want to read this at some point. So if I at least take care of it, I know who messed it up. That brings us to Zadarski's crossover issue. Did you want to dive in on this one?
Yeah, we can touch on it. I don't know how much we want to dive deep unless you have a lot of thoughts on it.
I mean, I don't have a ton of thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours.
I thought so for those of you who haven't read it, it is Chip Zdarsky writing himself as his real self in the world of crossover, being a comic writer and artist, needing to hide out as a different person because someone is hunting and killing comic creators because of the crossover event. So he is in some small town cooking as a line cook, and then goes into a comic shop where he is, which I don't know why, if something's killing comic writers and artists, why comic shops still exist. But that's not his fault. Donny Cates set that up in the first issue. And is recognized and starts talking to this guy. And basically he says, like, Chip Zdarsky is a character that I've created. It's like my writing persona. It's not who I am.
Yeah.
And
in fact, it is a legitimate pen name for him.
Right. It is a legitimate pen name. And on top of that, he and Matt Fraction wrote and illustrated themselves into an issue of Sex Criminals, where he further exaggerated the character of Chip Zdarsky, who is now a real thing that has come to life due to the crossover event, who then finds the real Chip Zdarsky and then ends up saving his life from something who's trying to kill Chip Zdarsky.
Yes.
And then it ends with him being interrogated by the characters from Powers,
which I was so excited about.
That was very cool.
That was amazing.
It was like meta on meta on meta. It was,
oh man, yeah,
friggin' buck wild. And I think that it was like, it felt like a very real self-reflection piece from Chip Zdarsky. He
definitely goes to some areas of personal psychology that I thought were very interesting. One of my favorite being the scene when he spoons himself. Yeah. And it could just could have been done just for laughs, but he actually is very kind of sensitive in the way he handles it.
Well, right, because the real Chip Zdarsky in the comic is very insecure and very kind of self-loathing at times.
Right.
And the character Chip Zdarsky is very like full of bravado and self-importance and charisma. And he's like telling the real life Chip Zdarsky that like, no, like you're great too.
Yeah. He's like soothing himself,
right.
Comforting himself. What's up, Carlito? We're talking about the Chip Zdarsky issue of Crossover, which my big hope, and I don't know how you felt when you finished this issue, my big hope was that like every Donnie story arc ends with like this as the annual, right? Like another Zdarsky creator. Issue.
So like clearly Bendis could do one now, or Mike Allred.
Right.
I mean, because he set up these other creators' characters in this world. Obviously, they're not all going to encounter themselves. But
I want more of this, though. Even the Zdarsky story arc, I almost want like another issue at some point down the road. I know it's supposed to be a solo standalone, but I almost feel like I'm going to want more at some point from that.
Yeah, it's a solo standalone, but like the way it ended, I assume that's going to carry over to the main story. Like they're not just going to leave that
maybe
big thing dangling in the wind.
But it was definitely the best issue. The best issue of Crossover that I've read. So,
which sorry, Donnie. Chip Zdarsky is doing a better job at your own comics. Is that what you're saying?
That's definitely what I'm saying. There's not even any subtlety to it. So I thought the issue 6 was my favorite because it was like, wow, this is kind of cool. We finally, here's Savage Dragon, here's Hit Girl. This is kind of cool. Those zombies from Walking Dead. Okay, kind of fun. then you get hit with this issue, which is far more subtle, but also, like you were saying, so much more meta and at the same time, way more emotional. And I'm just fully invested now.
No, I mean, it was great for sure.
All right. I feel like we're at the hour point. It feels like a good time to stop for June.
Yeah,
did you have anything else you wanted to say?
I feel badly for bringing this up, but I'm going to bring it up because it is a pet peeve of mine. I just want to mention it.
For crossover or for
no, for vinyl #1.
Okay.
Which you did not buy.
I did not.
I read. It was fine. I'm going to have to read it again because the way they told the story I felt was a little confusing and I wasn't sure I totally picked up on everything. But it did this thing that people do a lot in storytelling, which bugs the hell out of me, which is start the story and then say 48 hours earlier and then lead you back up to that point.
Yeah.
It 99.9% of the time serves no purpose whatsoever other than to grab you because they don't know how to grab you into the story.
Yeah.
Like it's
so
a cheap
jump you into the middle of the action, but then they've got to give you all the backstory.
It's a cheap trick that writers use when they're too lazy or not good enough to actually bring you into the story in the first couple of pages without this huge moment. And I feel badly saying it so bluntly about this comic that is perfectly fine. Like, it is not poorly written in any other aspect. It's just like, don't do that.
Special cursory note. Don't do that.
Cursory note. Don't do that.
Yeah. Don't scratch that. Don't put ointment on that.
That's all I had to say.
Okay.
But it seems like an interesting story. It's about a serial killer, so that's always cool.
Always
in my book.
Popular.
And there's some weird, wacky stuff in there. It's definitely intriguing. I don't want to shit on that book because I feel like I just did, and it's. I don't want to say that it's bad. It's just chop out those first couple pages.
So you're going to get issue 2 of it?
I might.
Okay.
After I reread it, I'll decide, because if I reread it and I'm still kind of lost, I won't. But if I reread it and say like, oh, okay, now I get where I was lost before, I might pick up issue 2.
All right. Good to know. Do you have anything? I know you're on D&D with Big Will on Sunday night.
Yes.
Anything else coming up that people need to be aware of?
I don't think so.
Tomorrow, I am dropping a full breakdown review of X-Men #1 by Jerry Dugan. So if you didn't buy it and you were curious, like, is it worth the $5? If you did buy it and you want to hear some commentary on it, if you want to hear about some of the, I think it's 4 first appearance of villains in this issue, I'm happy to break it all down for you. So look for Comic Community News tomorrow. I will be doing a full X-Men #1 breakdown, and you can kind of make up your mind. I don't really spoil the issue about what happens in it, but I do kind of show you kind of what's going on in the issue. And I used kind of like 5 times in that sentence. So there you go. Enjoy that. I'm on Saturday. Saturday, I've got my show with the girls, but then I'm going on a camping trip. I'm gone for a full week. So I will be missing D&D. I'll be missing the Wednesday show, and I will be dropping a video on Thursday next week. But I'm shooting it tomorrow, and I'll be uploading it, so it'll be ready in the queue. But after Saturday, I'm going to be kind of enjoying the wilderness with a bunch of trade paperbacks.
Nice.
Yes, I've got a short box, basically full of reading material. So yes. So hope everybody has a great new comic book day. Next book club is going to be on White Whale Comics channel, and I put the link down below so you can subscribe to us both, because we go back and forth every month, and we'll be looking at all the books from July. So if you are missing something, if you want to hear a review of something, or if there's something you loved and you want us to make sure we cover it, that's where it's going to happen for the month of July. All right. Everybody good? Never turn your back on White Whale Comics.